Welcome back. It's time for Locked On Huskies. We're going to be talking about the true freshman today. Austin Mack was one of the biggest stories of fall camp, but what about some of the other guys? Landon Hatchett, Curley Reed, Caleb Presley. There's a whole bunch of talent from the class of 2023. We might not see them this year, but they deserve to be talked about. So we're going to do that today on Locked On Huskies.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another Thursday edition of Locked On Huskies. Today is going to be a great day. We're recording this on Wednesday, but I love just, giving you that little fourth wall break that we talked about the other day. Lars, Hanson, great to have you with us here today. I'm Roman Tomashoff. You can find all our work at Inside the Huskies with Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated. Check all that out, si.com/college/Washington. Quick reminder here for the folks out there that this show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars Hanson, it's NFL Thursday. It's a great day. And, one of the biggest things when, as we get into the NFL season here, and shout out to FanDuel, check out everything with them as well, is rookies. And people always just say, oh, who's the next big thing? If you follow me on Twitter, people saw somebody out there who I will not mention who was, giving me a little bit of attitude for talking about Leia Tulatu, who will be a prime member of the class of 2024. I'm sorry, Husky fans, for bringing his name up, but we have to do that here at some point, and it will probably happen again in the future. But people love to plant their flag early on certain guys, and that's what college football fans like to do in the recruiting process. That's like what pro football fans like to do with the NFL draft. And these are guys that we've talked about before on the show, but we wanted to dedicate a full 30 minutes to some of these guys to just say, yeah, these are guys who we don't really want to, per se plant our flag, but just say, hey, if for you guys who are fans of this team out there that follow this team, that watch them every single day, that maybe because we as members of the media get a chance to just kind of peek behind the curtain and see their developments of practice. So outside of Austin Mack, who we've written about for, an extended period of time at this point, who is one person just from the class of 2023 on offense that you saw, whether it be in the spring or in the fall, that you just say, yes, this is somebody who fans should be really, really excited about?
Well, I think there's a few obvious choices, and you kind of touched on one, and I think we actually ironically touched on a couple of days ago when we talked about the running backs. But I think at his best, and when he becomes a finished product, I don't necessarily think it's going to be even next year when we see the best of Tyler Rogers, but I really do believe if he can kind of keep everything together, that they really could have something special. He reminds me of a combination of guys, right? He's not necessarily big. He's not big like Dylan Johnson, but he's got that twitchiness. He's got that ability to kind of just make that one cut and go, almost like Savon Ahmed back in the day.
That's what I was going to say. He's got that extra gear.
But he's also got that Myles Gaskin vision and that Myles Gaskin touch. I mean, that and I'm not going to harp on it as much, but that catch that he made pregame, it was one of those that you could easily just say, oh, I tried to catch it, let it go over your head and do whatever because it's pregame. The fact that he's got the attention to detail, he's driven, he's focused, and he's trying to make right effectively. He's gotten right in the eyes of the coaching staff. But I think in order to continue that and continue his ascension, he's got to take every single opportunity. And he hasn't gotten one. He probably won't get one this week, I don't think. But I think we will see him at some point this year. And there's going to be a reason for that. He's almost got that, when Will Nixon had the 21-yard run, he's got that ability to just hit the hole and go. But he's still a ways off from being a finished product. But I think kind of talking about a highest ceiling here, not necessarily on this segment because we're saying the same thing on the defensive side. But I do think Tybo is going to be one of those guys where we're going to look back and say, how is he a 3-star? He should have been a 4-star, and I think his play is going to indicate that probably in a couple of years.
And, sticking with the skill positions, I think that another guy who deserves love, and I don't necessarily think he has the highest ceiling at the position, but I think that Keith Reynolds deserves a lot of love because he was the lowest ranked member of the class on 247 Sports when everybody did end up signing. But he was somebody who throughout fall camp, and Tayshawn Lyons had his moments. He's listed in the depth chart now. And Rasheed Williams looks like he's going to be a really solid player, especially in the slot. But it's something when you watch Keith Reynolds, he's just got this extra gear. He's really twitchy. He's got that straight line speed too. And it's something where we watched him return kicks later on during fall camp, and it was, ooh, ooh, there's something here. It's not necessarily what Jeremy Bernard did on the first play against Boise State, but he has the ability to make guys miss in the open field. And I think he's just going to end up being, I know I've said this on a previous show, a souped up Giles Jackson.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly because when you look at him, not that Giles isn't big, but he is kind of more of a leaner version. He's really, this hasn't even got a full year in the weight room yet. So just imagine him next spring after he's been in the Ron McKeefer system for an entire year. I think he's going to be even further ahead. But that's what allowed him to be able to kind of not necessarily beat out, but just be ahead of those guys and Tayshawn Lyons and Rashid Williams. Even though Tayshawn is the one listed on the depth chart, offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb made it pretty clear. Yeah, Tayshawn's probably not going to be that sixth guy off the bench. He's going to be probably 7 or 8, and we think highly of him. And it's not no knock on Tayshawn at all, because actually I do think it's fair to say between him and Landon, those are the two biggest movers of that group in fall camp, because we saw we saw Tayshawn that first week. He was dropping passes, it just wasn't crisp, and we're like, okay, we're missing something here. And then a week and a half later, Tayshawn's running with the second team offense. He's catching everything in sight. And so it's like, okay, clearly something clicked for Tayshawn. So I think each one of those guys are probably going to have that moment as the season goes along, either in practice or potentially in the game, where it just clicks for them and they're able to take those next steps.
Speaking of Landon Hatchett, that's somebody who I want to make sure we touched on this segment, because it's somebody else who we've mentioned him before. We've talked about him a little bit before, but he's somebody who, kind of in the mold of Parker Brailsford, could start on this line as a redshirt freshman, just from the way, because it doesn't look like they're going to burn his redshirt this year. He didn't get in the game against Boise State. We'll probably see him this Saturday against Tulsa, but then maybe not for a while, barring injury, barring other things that might happen. It just feels like the coaching staff is so high on him, and they've been so pleased with his progress that, maybe they throw him in at right guard with Parker at center next year, or they just find some way to make that work, because he's just really shown off throughout when he got here in the spring and then throughout fall camp. He's just gotten better and better every single day.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing with Landon is just going to be understanding the scheme. Kind of like that was the hurdle, not necessarily the hurdle for Mateo Mele, but kind of like that was just the key for him. It's like, okay, hey, you've been shadowing Corey Luciano, you've been now, which is perfect for Landon, being able to shadow Mateo, who's played everywhere, who knows every single position along the offensive line. So that's a perfect teacher to pass along that knowledge to a freshman center, because Landon, I think, unlike his older brother Garen, is a true pure center. Garen obviously can play center, I think, if you want to, in a pitch similar to where Parker came in as a center, but I think he honestly might be just more of a fit at guard at this point, either side of the line at this point. But I think Parker maybe just has solidified himself more as a guard, because Landon also, to your point, has risen so much in a quick amount of time. But I think him it's going to be understanding the scheme, getting everything in sync, because the center really is, next to the quarterback, it's kind of stating the obvious here, but just that the essential player on offense, because everything goes through him, the protection, lines up everything. So right. I think if Landon can get all that stuff down, then he'll have no problem playing as a redshirt freshman.
I want to stick on the offensive line here for just another minute before we move on, and just talk about Elijah Jaquette, because he's somebody who we're definitely not going to see him this year, maybe not even next year, but he's somebody where, Lars, I remember making the comment to you at some point during one of these practices where it's just, look at how skinny he is. For somebody who on his tape, it really does move. Not only does he move well, he moves people really well. And it's something where, this is a dude that I could see being just a staple along the offensive line for a couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's one of those guys where this is not a knock on him, but it's just kind of it's also natural for high school offensive linemen to come in and need a year or two in the weight room. He's a guy where I think athletically he's gifted, but you also don't want somebody that lean. You want him lean. You want him to be able to move and do things like that, but he's got a ways to go in that regard.
So did Roger Rosegarden, who came in at 260 pounds, and look at him now.
Exactly.
And now, got to take a minute here to remind the good folks at home about LinkedIn, because these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's so easy to create just a job posting on LinkedIn. All you have to do is you have to add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's so important just to add the right team member, just like in recruiting. And adding some of these freshmen to your roster, it's just important. And that's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now, it's time to move on to the defense, because this defensive class was really impressive coming in. There's a whole lot of talent at all three levels of the defense. But I think the question is, and I remember one of the first things you said when you just saw how I phrased it in our graphic here is, who has the highest ceiling on defense? You're like, ooh, that's a good question. And now that you've had some time to think about it, we discussed a little bit before the show, but now they've had some time to just kind of go off it. Lars Hanson, who do you think has the highest ceiling from the 2023 class on the defensive side of the ball?
So they brought in 3 cornerbacks from high school, 3 or 4?
Yes,
three
depends on what you want to say about Dillon Gordon.
Right. Okay. So 4 defensive backs, 3 cornerbacks specifically.
5 defensive backs.
Whatever. So when I was looking on the sideline, I went through my photos after the game, because we like to scan the sideline, see who's there, and especially that's our main opportunity to get to see the players that we don't usually see play in the game, like freshmen. And in particular, I was looking at the quarterbacks. And Curley Reed standing in front of me, and I'm like, when did Jordan Miller get back here? When did he suit back up for this game? But here's the thing, I because you know how high I am on Leroy Bryant and Caleb Bresley, but Curley just looks bigger. Like his and I don't like to necessarily get into the underwear gymnastics of this whole thing, but you just look at his thighs. They were like one of his thighs or 2 of Leroy Bryant's. Not necessarily equally, but like it's pretty close actually. He just looks like he's a redshirt sophomore already. He just from the way he stands on the sideline, he's able, when you watch him in drills, he was a quick reactor kind of guy. He's got all the tools necessarily, but I think what's going to make it hard for him to play, especially, I mean, he's obviously not going to play a ton this year unless he's going to play 4 games, maybe, but maybe even less than that, because they have so many bodies. But I think for next year, it's understanding the scheme, because I think we've kind of picked up that a lot of these guys, even Jabbar Muhammad, where he was like, hey, this is a different scheme. I kind of got to, pick up a few key things here and there. So I think it's those details. I mean, it's taken Elijah Jackson a while to even see the field, both in this defense and last defense. He's got all the talent, right? But it's a matter of also understanding the scheme. And I think so as long as Curley can pick up that on a quick basis, which I don't think there's been no indication that he can't. But I'm just saying, as long as he's able to do that, I think he's going to be one of those next kind of leaders up at cornerback for Washington.
I like that a lot. And I had 2 answers that I was going to go with, and I was really struggling to pick between the 2. So I'm just going to give a quick couple of seconds on both. I know I've talked about Vincent Holmes on here before, but I wanted to start with Vincent Holmes because he's the same kind of guy where, like Elisha Chiquette on the offensive side, where even though he's playing free safety, it's the same thing where he needs to spend a lot of time in the weight room and get his body ready for the rigors of college. But once he is, I think it's just going to be a full go. I think there's not really going to be a huge learning curve for him. He's going to play a lot of free safety, and he's got just such impressive top end speed that he's going to make an impact. He could be just that old school Earl Thomas type of safety where it's, I just don't even need to worry about having help over the top, because I know that Vincent Holmes is going to be in the right position. And that's just what it feels like with him. And the other guy that I wanted to talk to, and I know we saw Devin Bryant get into the game on Saturday. We'll probably see a little bit more of him, but I want to talk about Jordan Whitney, because Jordan Whitney is just such an impressive athlete. And I think that's just really, really important to have at the linebacker position, because if you can just be a better athlete than the people lined up across from you, everything else can fall into place. And that's something that Jordan Whitney is right now. He's got insane closing speed. He's a really good tackler. And he's just somebody who, especially with just kind of moving into this new age of linebacker where they don't necessarily have to be 240, 245 pounds and just be the downhill thumper, of which like Raylan Goforth is that old style of linebacker where he's, I can run from sideline to sideline. I can drop into pass coverage. And while he's not necessarily the biggest guy in the world, where he's not 6'3", 6'4", he's big enough to make an impact against the run and the pass. And is somebody who is just going to fly around the field whenever he sees it. My light totally
well,
just fell. We're going to keep going.
No, I was gonna say, no, you're good. But I mean, I think that's kind of the thing we picked up with the linebackers, because we've seen even Drew Fowler as a walk-on get more time this year, maybe necessarily than really go for it. And that's not to say that Drew one is better than the other, but I think when you're able to just play fast and free, and that's kind of almost the definition of Jordan Whitney is fast and free. Like, I think he's a guy where as long as he can again, this all comes back to understanding the scheme. Yes, the coaches at the end of the day want their players to play fast and free, which means what that means is they're not thinking, right? You're not trying to, do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? That's all second nature by that point. When you're playing fast and free, now, because there's the chicken with your head cut off fast and free, where you're just kind of running and going, and you're just whatever happens. You might hit the quarterback, or you might just completely whiff and get blindside blocked. So there's two ways in which to go with that. When you're going to see the field more is with the latter, with the former, where you're able to understand the scheme, you know what you're going for, and you're just letting it rip. Now, you can make mistakes, and that's fine.
Absolutely, everybody does.
But the mistakes can't be because you were hesitant, because you didn't know, do I bite here? Do I bite? I mean, it's my story that's going to be coming out about Cam Landen. His interception, as Coach Morrell talked about it today, was that it just hit that on the Wednesday. What hit that on the head, where he said he just reacted. He just reacted. Yes. He was in the perfect spot, and that's because he is able to learn. He's learned over, and because we haven't seen a lot of KFAB, right? We haven't seen a lot of them.
Sure.
But now that these guys are understanding the scheme, that's what's separating these guys, is they have understood the scheme, and now they get to go prove it on Saturdays. Because if you don't prove it in practice, you're definitely not going to prove it on Saturdays.
So one thing that I feel like the coach speak term that we hear a lot is quick trigger, where it's just pulling a quick trigger and just going. And that's something that Devon Banks, Jabbar Muhammad, they've mentioned, like, yeah, that's something that, is the most important thing. And that's really, really big at linebacker. And, speaking of quick trigger, I got to pull one here and just remind everybody about College Football Live. Locked On College Football Live is awesome. And it's just gonna be really exciting. So, make sure you tune in, because college football season is here. And this season, Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel, so you can find it right here on Locked On Huskies. You won't want to miss it. Whew. All right. Is there anybody else you wanted to cover real quickly here before we move on?
I do want to clarify something about my previous statement about the cornerbacks, because I do think, as it was worth noting, there was two freshmen that were dressed, Curley Reed and Leroy Bryant.
Right.
Caleb Preston was, I believe, a healthy scratch, is what the indications are that we've heard. I just want to clarify, I don't necessarily think that's to knock Caleb. I think because the depth is so, deep in the room now, they don't necessarily, he's not necessarily, it's not a knock, because Anthony James, I believe, was a healthy scratch as well. There was a few other players that weren't, that certainly are healthy and can go, and it's not that they're not playing because of disciplinary reasons or anything like that. It's actually almost better for them. Hey, you know what? Just enjoy your freshman year. Learn, pick up, go to school, go to class, pick up everything, do all that sort of stuff. So when you come back as a redshirt, Byron Murphy proved it. You can go to the league and dominate and have no problem making it as a redshirt freshman or as a redshirt sophomore, right? You don't have to be that listed junior, right? Because you only need 3 years. And I remember when I talked to Leroy Bryant before he arrived at Washington, or literally about a week before he came up to Seattle, they had already planned out in a couple of years, Caleb's going to be at the nickel, Curley's going to be here, I'm going to be at the other far side, and we can all interchange because we all know that we all kind of have similar skill sets and we can all do a lot of the same things. And so I think, honestly, keeping that trio together is pretty key. So I think the fact that they were already planning on that before they even got to practice, as a collective, already kind of speaks volumes to where their mentality is. So I just wanted to clarify, because we haven't seen Caleb and we're probably not going to see him a ton this year, it's not that he's not performing. I think it's just that the depth is so deep that they don't necessarily have to.
No, I like that a lot. And now it's time to remind the good folks at home about Gametime. Because, Lars, we've talked about, especially with the Mariners in the midst of a playoff run, I'm sure everybody's really excited about trying to make sure that they can get their tickets. And being stressed out when you're buying tickets is just the worst thing in the world, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Just some of the best things about Game Time that I personally love to use whenever I'm looking for something. I love that tickets are really easy to find and buy for anything that I want to do. I can just be like, oh, if I want to do something this Friday night, oh, let me check Game Time. They also have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. They have so many different things that help make sure that you're getting the best experience. And that's why Game Time is the place for last minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less anywhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Is it too early to talk about an early outlook for the class of 2023, and just in terms of what we've seen through, guys that arrived early in the spring, guys that we just saw throughout fall campers, like, I'm impressed with what I'm seeing from Austin Mack or Landon Hatchett or whoever else it might be. Is it too early to do that? Because I don't think so.
I mean, I think we're not going to make any judgments. We're not going to make any. This class is terrible. This class is star-studded, because I don't necessarily think you can say that about.
That's too early,
right? You can't. No, but you can't say either at this point, right? You can't say either or, because we saw Zach Henning able to get in the game as a true freshman against Boise State just for that last series. Just kind of get a couple of snaps under his belt. We saw a couple other players play. I remember telling you after, I think it was last week, one of last week's practice, or maybe even earlier this week. We're watching these balls from about the 45 to 50 just kind of arc perfectly, and I couldn't necessarily see who it was. I took a step to the right. I'm like, oh, that's Austin Mack.
Yep.
Okay. And it was just so smooth. It was like it wasn't like watching Michael Penix, right? Because there is no ball like Michael Penix. Okay. Like, no matter, and as good as Austin is, I don't even necessarily think those balls would be as good, just because. And that's with all due respect, right? I think at this point, there's a reason why Michael Penix is one of the top 4 Heisman contenders in the country for that reason, right?
And nobody's saying that Mack can't get to that point either, though.
Exactly. But I think he's already got that, I don't want to say raw potential, because he's got all the traits and tools in the book. I think it's just a matter of it's a when thing. And I don't think necessarily that they will have to force the issue next year. But I do think it's a chance where it's almost like Jake Browning, where, hey, can Jake beat out Jeff Lindquist and earn this job? And he did. Yep. And Dillon will still be serviceable. I mean, he's proven that against Boise State. The coach has said he made the read and nailed Josh Cuevas for a touchdown. So I mean, literally Cuevas didn't have to do anything on that play because Dylan Morris did such a good job. That demo wasn't the demo of 2021 that most UW fans seem to not like anymore, right? This is a lot different Dylan Morris. So I think necessarily when it comes to looking at this class, I mean, we know probably Landon's going to play pretty early just because both the position and his grasp now, I mean, it would take probably a significant injury, which again, you never wish for, but I mean, that's really the only thing that would hinder
happen in college football.
But that would be the only thing at this point that would hinder his progression and ascension to the track that he's currently on. Similar to where Parker, you kind of came in last year. They knew he wasn't going to play. We kind of knew he wasn't going to play, but it was also, I remember me and you talking where it's like, but he's going to be a guy. Like I know he was a 3-star, but it was Suero, and it's like, that's a pretty dang good high school, So I think, and we saw that this fall, where he was able to add the weight. He already knew the system, so that wasn't the issue. Just, can you get big enough? Can Landon maybe add another 10 pounds, right? Just a little bit more, just for the sake of your health and body. And if he can do that, I think him and Henning are kind of two guys that you can pencil in. I mean, again, Jalen Clem is kind of the asterisk in this because he's a redshirt freshman and he didn't come in with this class, but he does fill that gap in the room, right? That's how Scott Huff assisted, that he's kind of that gap filler to close out the room. But then to the point, there's so many young potential guys on this line, but not all of them have to play next year. They can, but they don't necessarily have to, and that's because of the benefit of Scott Huff's recruiting.
Right. I do have to make a quick side note here. Viewers are very split on whether if they love or hate how much you say "to your point," which I think is very funny personally.
Well, to their point, I don't care.
But no, it's somebody that I really wanted to bring up when we talked about this was Anthony James, because I just wrote something about him that you can go check out at Inside the Huskies. But he's somebody where I think that when they when they initially won his commitment after he decommitted from Texas A&M, he was still a top 50 player in the country. Yeah, he fell a lot through the course of his senior season and just the talent evaluation process, but he's somebody who I think can still make a really big impact here. And it's something where he spent a lot of time at edge in the spring. And then I spoke to edge rusher coach Eric Schmidt today, who said that he's playing inside a lot more often now. And the plan is still to use him on the edge, but kind of in that bare front that we saw a little bit where they put a third defensive tackle out there on the field. So he almost is transitioning into a full-time defensive tackle at this point. And he's somebody who is really explosive, has a lot of athleticism. And when Kalen DeBoer and his staff got that commitment at first, it was such a big deal. It was, whoa, they're getting this kind of kid from Texas. And if he can live up to that potential that he had really early on in his recruiting process, that's a big win that can just help this team going forward in so many different areas.
I completely agree. And one unique thing that I learned about Anthony this summer was when he was taking part of the camp, an NIL camp that UW hosted with the boys, not UW hosted, that they hosted with the Boys and Girls Club. And one thing he told me was that he's only played defensive line his entire career. He's never been a guy that was a linebacker that's converted to different things. So that tells me he's not a one-trick pony, that he's just an edge rusher, but he means he understands all the nuances of playing the defensive line. So him moving inside, I don't necessarily think there's going to be a massive learning curve. I'm sure there will be some, certainly, without question. But I do think the combination of the coaching that he's going to have from Inoki, the coaching that he's already had from Eric Schmidt, and the fact that he's a natural defensive lineman, if you will. It doesn't necessarily matter where he plays. Maybe, again, the body shape and the body type are certainly better at other positions, and some positions less so. But I think if he's maybe able to add, what do you want to say, 10 pounds, 10, 15 pounds between this
Probably
season
15, yeah.
Between this season and next season. And maybe, again, you could potentially say he could gain more. But then I think, well, then are you becoming a run-stuffing defensive tackle? You know, I think you want to maintain that ability, the agility, and the things that make him an excellent player that made him a 4-star. But him moving inside necessarily, to me, I think it's almost just a natural fit.
No, it is exactly that, where it kind of seemed that way from day one because of his body type. And just because of what he excelled at was that quick twitch, that first step where, yeah, that works on the edge. But if you don't have that long speed, then it gets a little bit tougher. And it's not saying that he doesn't have that, but it works better for him on the interior, where Eric Schmidt said, yeah, it's his athleticism. That's what really helps him thrive on the interior, is the fact that he can bend and he can do all these different things that, you know, he learned how to do on the edge, but because of his frame, and he said, yeah, mother nature ran her course, and, you know, it's just helped him grow into 6'5", 270. Like, that's what he is right now. And that's tough to play on the edge. Like Zion Tupuola-Fatui did it. And even he has just had to change his weight, and he's slimmed down a lot over the last couple of years. So it's not like, oh yeah, this is the new prototype. It's, yeah, we're going to try to get you up 285, 290 and just kind of let you go to work on the interior.
Exactly. And I think the other thing to remember with the number of bodies that they have along the defensive line in general, especially, you know, we go back to the Parkers, and I'm sure they're probably going to hit the portal again, but I think there's enough depth to where they're able to move guys around. And I also have to wonder, that speaks probably positively to another healthy scratch, Jacob Lane. Right, at least I don't believe Jacob Lane did, but if he did, it was in a limited role, because I think ironically PFF had him listed for 3 snaps, but I didn't see him in the game sheet. So that, you know,
either.
But again, he also was a guy. I remember Coach Inge, after he signed, I think it was a spring game. Coach William Inge walks past him and says, "Ooh, fast lane." And so I think him coming off the edge, I think he's kind of one of those not necessarily under the radar, but just kind of one of those guys where, again, not a project, but for lack of a better term, a project, right? To where we don't necessarily need an edge rusher next year because you have Lance Holtzclaw, Maurice Hines, et cetera. But he's a guy maybe in 2 or 3 years, he could be that highest ceiling guy when he feels that and when he does everything, because of the speed he's going to have coming off the edge.
Yeah, he was super impressive in the spring game, and was somebody who I was just, yeah, this is, I see why they like him a lot. And that was really promising, especially for that position where there's going to be a lot of attrition on the defensive line over the next couple of years, just in terms of guys who are going to be leaving. So having just all this youth behind him, and I think that's really why we wanted to make sure that we got this show in here, was because there are so many draft eligible guys on this 2023 team. who we're probably not going to see moving forward. And it's just, okay, well, moving to the Big Ten, what does the future look like? And because we're going to spend so much time talking about this very, very talented team that we want to just make sure that, the future is, I don't know if I want to say it's overly bright, because there's just so much that you never know what's going to happen, but there's a lot to be excited about in the future. Lars, as always, I want to thank you for being here with me today. And thank you to all you everydayers out there for tuning in. Make sure you check out our Friday show, where we are going to be breaking down Tulsa and just going through everything, keys to win on both sides of the ball, and just having a little bit of fun with some bold predictions like we normally do. And make sure wherever you get your podcasts, you like, comment, subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating. If you like some of the things we do, we appreciate it. If you don't, we appreciate that too. And we love hearing how we can get better every single day. Just make sure that you let us know whatever it is, because that's what it's about. We're going to keep growing, keep learning every single day. And we appreciate your support. Stay tuned for more.